the new president of IANS, and she is a near-death experiencer and is going to tell us about her experience and her life before and after and during. And I have to preface this by saying that she, I picked her up Thursday night at the airport, and she stayed in the IANS room where our guests usually stay in my home. And yesterday morning we were getting ready to go to breakfast, and she was coming down the steps, and she did a movie version of a roll down the steps, and she broke her arm in 2 places. So we spent the morning yesterday here in the hospital and gave her a little preview of coming attractions. And is it okay now? She's been pretty good today. We had Arnica every hour yesterday, and she's doing pretty well. So please give a warm welcome and lots of healing energy to our guest speaker, Yolaine Stout.
We were joking about that, saying, no, I wasn't trying to have another near-death experience. And I think that the doctor called, what kind of bone is that? Humorous. So I didn't find anything humorous about it. No. But it doesn't hurt. Just this thing is here more of a reminder not to, play tennis with anyone. I'm really sad about it because I love to gesticulate when I talk. So I will go, maybe with my left hand. But we'll see. Well, thank you for bringing me here to your lovely city. I've never been here before. Diane drove me around and I saw the beautiful skyline, which is just fabulous. And I really enjoyed it, and hearing all the reasons you are here, and it's very touching, it's very moving, and I have to say that we have 50 local groups in the United States, IANS does, and this is one of the largest, most successful groups that I've seen. And that's thanks to the help of Diane, largely her work in the board. I'd like to see this duplicated throughout the United States and the world. We were talking in the car the other day, and I likened IANS to an apple tree. And our board is the trunk, but it's the local groups who produce the fruit. They're out there meeting with experiencers and talking with them, and with the local people and people who are interested, people in grief, people who have are nearing death themselves, want to hear these stories and need to hear these stories. So thank you for producing that fruit, Diane. You're doing a great job. I will tell you about my near-death experience, and I have to wear kind of 2 hats because IANS has our board has a policy not to give a single viewpoint on spirituality or anything like that, but because I had an NDE, I'm sorry, I do tend to talk about what my personal beliefs are as a result of my experience. So I have to preface that, or put in that disclaimer that the views that I express here are not necessarily the views of the IANS board. So anyhow, what happened to me, I'll talk a little about what happened to me before my experience so that you can understand kind of the content of the experience, and then what happened afterwards. I was raised in a family in Los Angeles. My parents were very loving. I was very fortunate. They were Catholic, raised me a Catholic, and I didn't realize growing up how fortunate I had been to be in such a loving family, and I kind of expected the whole world to be, all adults to be like my parents, and I wanted to be like my mom. I wanted to be a loving mother. I wanted to have children. I wanted to have a husband who loved me. I wanted to have a garden. I wanted to have a nice house. I wanted to have. I wanted love in all its forms. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be taken care of. I wanted to I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted my students to love me. I wanted everybody to love me. And I thought that was that's what life was about. And that's what made people happy. Because people are happy when they're around people who love them, right? I thought that that's what happiness was. And I wasn't seeking fame or fortune. That was never in my mentality. I just wanted a simple life. And I was raised Catholic, though, but I left the church when I was 18. I could not accept the notion that the Catholic Church, or any church for that matter, was the only true religion, and that people born into that church, if they weren't born into that church, would have to go to purgatory before they could go to heaven. And I just couldn't accept, the little kids in Africa, they can't help it that they weren't born into a Catholic family. Why should they be punished? It just could not compute. And I would argue with the priest. Now, I was the oldest of four brothers, and so even though it was, I had a kind of a sweet personality, I also had a very stubborn part of me, very, very stubborn. And I would argue with the nuns and the priest, and I didn't care who came into that room. I would argue with them. You can't prove to me the Catholic Church is the only true religion. You cannot prove this to me. I won't accept it. It's not fair to the little kids in Africa. And so, you know what? I'm leaving. I'm not going to be a Catholic anymore. And what's more, I don't even believe in God. I don't even believe in that. Because if this is a lie, that's got to be a lie. And the whole religion thing must be just to appease people, make them feel better, but if there was no truth in it, what is this stuff, heaven? What is this stuff, God? Nobody can prove God's existence. So I became pretty cynical at age 18. And it was about that time I was in a relationship with a young man through high school, 4 years. And he left me for another girl. And I sank into depression and more cynicism. And so it was about that time I didn't have a near-death experience, but I did come within 48 hours of dying. I had a ruptured appendix, and I was lying most of my senior year with tubes draining out of my abdomen. But anyway, I got better through kind of it's another story, but it was a miraculous kind of thing how I healed out of that all of a sudden. But a friend invited me to go to Europe with her, and I said, oh, okay, let's go to Europe. So I took the money I had earned in Taco Bell, and we went off to Europe. And it was on this trip that I met another young man and fell head over heels in love with him. I said, he's the man. He's the man, and we're going to have a happy marriage and happy children and a house with a sunny garden, and he's going to give me my happy picture. This is going to be my happy thing, and I was so looking forward to that. We got married. He was Austrian, and I moved lock, stock, and barrel, everything over to Austria. And it was really rough on my parents. And I didn't want to kind of deal with that, with the pain I was causing them. I just kind of denied that, and I could never let them know I was unhappy. That would make it hard for them to deal with that. Anyway, so we get married, and he's talking to me about Jesus, and he's talking to me about God. I said, you gotta stop that nonsense. I talked him right out of being religious too. He was a kind of cynical person too at that time, so he kind of readily accepted that with my long arguments, how there cannot be a God, and all this was a figment of the imagination, all this stuff. And so I was kind of in that frame of mind, married to him, and 7 years into it, our marriage had been falling apart. I should have gotten somewhat of a clue this wasn't going to go well when I moved into his parents' house for the first couple of weeks, and I went up to put my suitcases up in the attic, and I went up there and I saw kind of like an altar, and I'm looking at this altar, and it took my breath away. It turned out his dad had been a Nazi officer, and this was all Nazi paraphernalia out there, his awards and his badges and things like that. And I said, oh my God, what have I got myself into? And so that played a role in kind of his behavior towards me, but our marriage was falling apart. And he was verbally abusive. Nothing I did was right. Everything I tried to do was wrong. And that was really tough. And I was very homesick for my family. Extremely homesick. And the one last hope that I had was, well, okay, my husband doesn't love me. I'm homesick, and that stubborn nature says, nobody in my family, by the way, had ever gotten divorced. And so that was not on my radar screen. It was like, till death do you part, and I said that, and I'm sticking with it. Well, little did I know. But I was in this state of mind where, I was anemic, I was getting blood transfusions, I was tired all the time. And then they told me that I couldn't have children. I had to go in for, have my tubes x-rayed, and it turned out they were blocked. And at that time, they didn't have a means to open them up. All of that together just spiraled me into a deep depression. It was painful, painful depression, and I didn't have the energy to get up in the morning. And if any of you have had depression, I'm just so compassionate for that, because it's just hard to understand, not have any kind of physical illness, but to be so tired and to be so painful to get through the day. Everything required enormous amounts of effort just to get dressed, just to go to school, just to deal with people, just to talk with anybody. All I wanted to do was to curl up and sleep and escape the world. Sleep was deprived, you wake up in the middle of the night, your thoughts ruminating, all these negative thoughts. Nobody loves me. I'm never going to achieve happiness. I don't deserve happiness. It must be because I deserved it, because, how did I get myself into this situation? It was about that time I started to contemplate suicide. And I went through all the scenarios. Okay, how do I do this? I wasn't afraid of dying. I wanted to die. I wanted to escape this pain. And I certainly didn't believe there was anything on the other side. Nobody had ever heard of near-death experiences in 1982. In Austria, Raymond Moody's book had not been translated, or if it had, I didn't know about it. But I went through all the scenarios of how do I do away with myself? Do I take pills? Okay, what if I don't take enough and I wind up brain damaged or something like that, or it's going to make me violently ill? It's going to look like suicide. I didn't want it to look like suicide because I didn't want to hurt my parents. It was hard enough for them to deal with me being away, but the suicide, that would crush them. But I had to leave. I just had to find a way to get out. It couldn't look like suicide. So then I went through accident scenarios. Okay, drive the car off the cliff. Again, I didn't want to wind up mangled. I didn't want to look like suicide. It's hard to kill yourself and not have it look like suicide. I discovered that. So I'm thinking, how can I do this? How can I do this? Well, I didn't want to be in pain either. I didn't want to, chicken. I didn't want to do anything painful, like shoot myself. No. So it just so happened I had been reading a book about Native Americans and Aborigine Inuits and Eskimos had, when they felt their time to die had come, they would walk off in the forest and simply lie down and die. They would will themselves to die. They just, something they did up in their head, just they would click and they would die. And me and my stubborn went, they can do it? I can do it. I can just try this every single night. I will try to will myself to die. I mean, right now I laugh about this thing, you know, but when you're depressed and thinking about this, you don't think clearly. Anyway, so I had been taking, this is called autogenic death, or psychogenic death. And I had been taking courses that was just so called in Innsbruck, called autogenic training, which is mind over body control, kind of like meditation, that they use for Olympic athletes to try to gain absolute control over their bodies, control over pain, control over whatever it is, and more endurance, more energy. They would visualize this. And that was kind of cool. I actually enjoyed that. So if that's the way, maybe that's an autogenic death, autogenic training. Woohoo! That must be the answer. So every night I went through this program that is very regimented, and they say not to do this unless you have a supervisor near you because it can be dangerous. I never knew what that was, why, but you know, I didn't care at that point. Anyway, so I went through this regimen every night for months. And I could gain a lot of control over my body. I could make my body go hot. I could make it go cold. I could make my body tingle. I could make, you know, I could seem like I could make my heart stop even. It seemed like I didn't know, but I would go in, oftentimes I would go into this black void space where I felt nothing. I could not feel my body. It was absolute, this void. I thought, well, I'm getting close. I'm getting close now. This is really cool, you know. But my thoughts are still here, so I'm not there yet. So I'm just going to keep trying. What did I have to lose? Just every night, just keep doing this. So months went by, and then something happened. One night, this is midnight, or I don't know, it's late, dark, and light filled my room. And I could see, even though I'm really nearsighted and always have been, I could see down the hall. And I could see in the mirror, and I could see every shiny detail in the bedspread. I looked out the window, and the sky was blue. I said, holy, four-letter word. This is another reality. This is some kind of other dimension here. This is more real than real. This is another reality. People have to know about this. This is really cool. This is exciting. I gotta find evidence that this exists. People have to know about this. Is really interesting. I wonder if I can fly. I wonder if I can go through walls, or I wonder if what I can bring back to prove to people that there was this other dimension. I forgot all about dying. You know, this is way too cool. And so I started to hear voices. I know just psychiatrists what that sounds like. But I did. I heard these voices, and I thought, oh my God, I can hear everybody dreaming in this building. I'm hearing their dream thoughts. That's the way. I will go wake up my husband and tell him what he's dreaming. And then he'll know that I must have been somewhere to pick up that. How would I know that otherwise? But I couldn't pick out his voice. There were too many things going on. So what else can I find? So I started to get up out of my bed. And I wasn't aware of any body sensation, but I was just starting to get up out of my bed when another light entered my room. And this light was pure, unconditional love. And it permeated every cell in my body. And I merged with this light. And it felt home. This light felt like where I belong forever. And I could feel that love was so palpable. It was, my mom had embraced me. She'd hugged me. And it was great, but there was nothing compared to this. I just felt this palpable, real energy, this incredible love. I said, I want to stay here. This is home. This is what it's like to be loved. And just as I said that word, it went away, and I'm back in my room. I don't think I was ever gone, but anyway, it was my room was lit up, and I was in a state of, what was that? Oh my God. And it's still, everything's all lit up, and I turned to my side of my bed, and there's a man standing there. And it didn't shock me. It didn't surprise me because I was in this state of pure love. And he was wearing white robes. And I looked up, and I recognized that man as Jesus. And that's weird. But at the time I didn't feel it, but he was Jesus. Like you'd recognize your grandmother, People say, how did you know it was Jesus? I said, I just knew. Like I'd know my mother if I saw her on the street. More real than any of you sitting in this audience right now. More real. And he was looking at me with infinite love and infinite compassion. And he said one sentence that I remember now every single day of my life. One sentence. And he said, don't waste your life thinking you're not loved. And that last word, the room went dark, and I realized then I was out of my body. And it sucked me backwards into my body, and it was extremely painful because here I was in this wonderful state, this kind of spiritual state, I guess. And I'm being pulled back into this cold, depressed body. And it was like this Lego snap, It was painful, And I thought, my life was changed from that moment on. And I had to pick apart this sentence because something like that coming from an authority figure like that, who I obviously needed an authority of some type, get it through my head. Don't waste your life thinking you're not loved. Well, that's what I've been doing all my life, was seeking love out there. Someone's got to give me love. I'm not worthy unless I am loved. Someone's got to fill my hole in my soul. I can't be anybody unless I get it from people. So I realized that love isn't about getting or having or a thing out there. That's the way I interpret that. And then the first part of the sentence, don't waste your life. And when he said the word life, there was this aura of precious around it. He didn't say precious, but the way he said that word life, it was like sparkly precious. And so don't waste your precious life. That meant I had a purpose. But what the hell was that? I didn't know what my purpose was. I spent a lot of time figuring out, I don't want to waste my life. I don't want to waste my life. I don't want to waste my life. What do I need to be doing? I don't know. So, I even thought about the middle part of that sentence because I was a language teacher. Don't waste your life thinking. Get out there and do something. And that's what I interpreted to be, to do something, not just things. So, love. And I kind of thought about all the problems in the world, and it seems so many of them are about seeking approval, seeking attention, seeking fame, seeking all that stuff out there to be validated, to feel worthy, to feel good. And it's not out there. to me, this is what this taught me. It's not out there. That's an illusion. That's a mirage. You can never get enough of it. It'll never fill you up. Why? Because you don't have a hole in your soul. It's already filled. Thinking you're not loved. You are loved. And so it became giving love. Like, hello, duh. Giving love. That was a new concept to me. Yeah, I felt I was a loving person, a sweet person, but I would just not think about life in terms of service or giving that, what you have. And so I kind of felt that that was what it was about, but I also felt there was something more to that. In my marriage, I tried then afterwards to make it work with this sort of new, sudden view of things, but that was too far gone. And I still remained depressed because I couldn't figure out what I should do in this situation. But what was really weird was when I finally made the decision to leave, it was like my body filled up with this incredible passion, this incredible energy. I didn't know where that came from. That felt so good. That felt so incredible. It was like God or the universe is saying, she's finally getting it. She's finally making the right decision for herself. You know, not relying on other people to do stuff, or you're going to do it, you know, so don't waste your life. That was part of it. Making a choice on my behalf to do what was right for me. And so I did. And that was lesson number one after the near-death experience. It's you know, a lot about your personal choices for me. I really monitor what my choices are, and with that. And so after this experience, it was only I moved back to the United States, and I found out about near-death experiences. And oh my God, other people have had this. Other people have had this kind of experience, and I became a voracious reader. I had to read everything there was about near-death experiences. I needed to know everything because I felt like I got a glimpse, and so my source of truth has become other near-death experiences because they got a glimpse. Everybody got a glimpse. I wanted to get as much of the whole picture as I could, you know, knowing I don't think anybody will ever get the whole picture while they're here. But I wanted to find out as much as I could and make meaning out of my life so I wouldn't be wasting it. So I continued to teach high school. I had been a teacher there in Austria, and I was a teacher here. And couldn't talk about it to anybody, especially as a public high school teacher. One of the quickest way to get kicked out of school is, you know, talk woo-woo stuff like this. Anyway, I only told my parents about this 3 years ago. And so it was really tough for me keeping such an important thing to myself. But there were many miracles that happened in my life subsequently that I just trust happened for a reason. Answered prayers, phenomenal stuff. I'll tell you just one I'll tell you two. One was that I was able to adopt a boy, and not only adopt him, but nurse him. And it wasn't just the nursing, it was all the people I had met prior to this had left no doubt in my mind that I couldn't do it. That I just could do it. I knew I could do it. Supply and demand, stimulus response, no problem. So I was able to nurse, I had a baby, and I was able to nurse him like a real mother. And that was incredible. And other miracles that have happened is I got remarried to a lovely man. I've been married now for 17 years, and we love each other more each day. And he's very open and very supportive of what I'm doing. And he's just an amazing guy. And what he did was he helped they were going to build this golf course across from our street. And I thought, well, that's fine. My dad likes to golf. He comes down, he can golf, no problem. But I found out that they were going to be building it on this rare native grassland that had Native American archaeology on there and Spanish colonial archaeology, and 5 of California's rarest habitats were there. And I didn't know much about that, but rare meant something important and something precious and something God made, you know. And so I began to ask questions, and one thing led to another, and I'm being pushed, and I find myself a leader of a movement in our community, and fighting this golf course, really not fighting the golf course, but trying to save the field. And people were mad that I was, and I didn't want to be a leader of this, but you know, things just kept happening. People came on, you have to do this, no, you gotta do this. I didn't know the first thing about that. I was just a German English teacher. I didn't know anything about EIRs and CEQA and all those terms. But we're fighting this battle. People are angry. They'd lost money. There was going to be a lawsuit. It was going to be nasty. And I had to go to front of the board of supervisors and give a talk about why it was important to save that field. And it was going to be a room very much like this, with standing room only, on television, and you know, worst thing imaginable, an angry crowd, right? And so I was in this turmoil. I said, God, I need to know I'm doing the right thing. I mean, I felt like this is what was wanted of me the past couple of years. I need to know the answer. Am I doing the right thing here? People are so angry. And so I, waiting for this board of supervisors, just terrified, just absolutely terrified of this thing. When I got a call an hour later after that prayer, and this 12-year-old girl, I've never heard of her, she called me and said, "Are you Mrs. Stout, the lady trying to save Wrights Field?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "I have a poem that I'd like to read to you what that field means to me." And she read this poem, and it was all about how this was her church. This was her place to grow spiritually. This was her place of peace. And she'd have a fight with her parents, and she'd go out in this field of beauty and return to her parents in peace and work things out. And she talked about the oceans of boulders and the waves of grass, and it was such a beautifully written poem. And I said, "Megan, you don't know what you've just done here. You just answered my prayer." And what I saw that was, the message to me was, Yolaine, it's not about you. It's about the next generation. It's about helping people and preserve something important. And it was like, oh, duh. You know, not about me. What a concept. And so I went there just with that thought in mind. It's not about me. I'm just here to serve. I'm just here to do what I can do, be there, trust, go along with it, be a part of this thing, do what's right. And I was a complete piece giving that talk. And long and short of it is, we raised $3 million, and it's now a nature preserve. The money just came in. The very people who fought us so hard turned around to be our greatest supporters. They said, "You were serious about saving that field for the kids, weren't you?" Well, yeah. Well, here's the money. Here's $100,000. Hire an executive director. You know, the money just came. Our grant was ranked #1 in the state. The money just, the county that were so opposed to us that we had to sue over approving the golf course, they came around and they wound up giving us more than half of that. The board of supervisors became a friend of mine. You know, the board is miraculous. The third miracle was in my life, I think, becoming president of IANS. I wasn't seeking this job. I was writing a book on a spiritual solution to depression. And I have to kind of backtrack. You know, I had to leave my marriage to do what felt to me needed to be done. I felt at some point I had to leave teaching. Things were happening, I needed to leave. And when I left, and I just started writing. It just started pouring out of me. It just started pouring out of me, this writing. And I felt that my purpose in life, I finally got what it was for me, not waste my life. To me, it felt helping others find purpose. And work with people who've been depressed, people who've been where I've been, to kind of show them this power of near-death experiences and the power of love and overcoming fear and this idea of being of service, and it isn't about us, it's about what we do here for others. And so I'm writing this book, and I found through this book, I met Ken Ring, and I met people, and sooner or later, I find myself president of this international organization, and I remember back to what I said the first thing I said in my near-death experience. So people have to know about this. This would give them so much hope. They need to know what excitement. People have to know about this. And now I'm president of an organization whose mission it is to prove to the world this exists. And I wasn't seeking that. I was just trusting what was going along. Just okay, felt this urge, gotta do it. So yeah, give up my book. No, you have, no, not about you. Come on. you gotta do this. So I became a life coach and a writer, and I have consulted with nonprofit organizations who I think are very similar to individuals. You know, nonprofits are like, you have to have a purpose statement, and you have to have a plan to implement it. You have to have trust in the people you work with. You have to overcome fear. You're in service for humanity. So nonprofits and individuals, to me, in my mind, are very similar. Find purpose, find passion, what it is you love to do. Where is your fascination? Where is your excitement? It's there, you know. And so miracles, little big, happening all the time. So on that note, I will end my talking about me and take some questions from you guys. Whatever you'd like to ask me, I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got. And one thing that people did ask me in another talk was if I felt I'd become a Christian now because I saw Jesus. And I said, no. And they said, why not? Oh my God, you saw Jesus Christ and you didn't become a Christian? I said, no. It's like, he was a person, not a religion. He was a person that had something important to say to me, a soul, an authority figure that I needed, you know, I would recognize. If my grandfather had appeared, I probably wouldn't have listened, you know. See, they just show me, you know, I'm that stubborn kind of person. I've got to get it through my head, you know. And so he was a person, not a religion. And I saw in that people on the other side, no matter who it is, are so filled with that love. That love was for all of humanity, including the kids in Africa who weren't born to Catholic parents. That's for all of humanity. Anyway, yes?
Do you want me to use a mic or just talk loud?
You can talk loud and I'll repeat.
Okay.
If I can remember.
Do you really believe that you were clinically dead?
Okay.
And also, can you speak to the fact that you had a desire to be dead and therefore, you know, could be suicide? And there's a lot of judgment, even in spiritual circles, about what it means to take your own life and the consequences spiritually of that. So can you speak to those questions?
Yeah, I'll start with the first question. You remind me if I forget the other things that you touched on. Is do I believe I was clinically dead? I don't know. I don't know if there's any way to answer that question. But I do know, as working and studying with near-death experiences, that you don't have to be dead to have a near-death experience. We have over 800 people who've registered their near-death experiences on our website and talked about their experience and what they felt. One of the questions we asked, did you believe you were clinically dead at the time? And of those over 800 people who submitted their experience, only 25% felt they were clinically dead. 75%, 50% felt they were, some kind of emotional trauma or a physical trauma or sick, but not dead. And then there were 25% who were nowhere near dead, who were perfectly healthy, walking down the street, meditating, or singing a song, or doing some regular activity. And they would have experiences that were identical, in the universal features. And every NDE is different, but they have these 15 common elements. And so the people walking down the street having an experience is no different. So it's the term near-death experience is kind of unfortunate in that way. It's really about the experience and not the trigger. But what is important too is for the people who are clinically dead when they have it, it does kind of show that the mind or consciousness can be independent of the brain. So the other question you asked about judgment over suicide. What did you want me to comment on that?
The whole concept that if you take your own life, that there are some kind of consequences spiritually for that you would have a whole different experience in terms of reincarnation or whatever than you would if you died a natural death.
There are, that's one reason I really wanted to study near-death experiences. I wanted to find out what happens to people who committed suicide. And it's different. The causes of suicide can be many. One, for people who are in such massive pain, it can't be wrong. And there's no sign that there's any punishment of any kind. For some people, have had hellish type experiences due to committing suicide. They've had negative experiences. But in all cases, you get the message, it's not your choice to take your life. That's up to an agreement with God or a higher power. It's not up to you when your time is. How many people are told it's not your time? Work to do, go back. You don't have a choice, you gotta go back. Oops, wrong person. We didn't know. No. But what happens on the other side isn't up to us. The message that we get, we can't say, we can't judge people who've had this, I don't know if I'd have had the same experience if I had, done something like shoot myself where there was absolutely gonna die, But I was told, don't waste your life. And so I had that kind of urgency, not to be wasting my life. But I didn't sense one iota of threat behind it or punishment. There was absolute forgiveness and compassion. Yes?
I want to ask a question about that in-between state that you went to.
Mm-hmm.
And I visit that place quite frequently on a weekly basis.
Uh-huh.
And to me, it doesn't feel like a place that's so far away. It feels very here, very present. But when I do end up coming back into my body, the qualitative difference between being there and here isn't so very far apart from me. The places between the two worlds aren't so far away. And I just wanted you to talk about that place if you visit it again frequently, because
Yeah.
to me it's a place of home at least once a week.
Yeah, she was talking about being able to, on a weekly basis, experience what, kind of like what I was talking about in the beginning in the darkness, what I called the void, and it being not so far different from this reality in a sense, and then not so far away, but definitely out of body, nevertheless. Yes, I didn't feel like I was out of body at that time, although when I went back, that definitely had been. This is a very common feature of near-death experiences, is the void state prior to the reality. And it's kind of like an initial state for many, not for everyone. And some people feel that love in that state.
Yeah, so I'm saying that I've broken it down in between the void where you're really a holding place,
Yes,
and then you go beyond the void, and then there's that love that you
Right.
express that it's beyond words.
yes.
Yes, that's the place that I visit very often.
You're very fortunate to be able to visit that very often. And the void state I never tried to achieve it again because I associated with suicide. So I go so far in relaxation meditation, but I don't take it to such extremes anymore because I don't want that. I know I'm not supposed to. I feel that, but I don't have any judgment about, for other people who just want to explore and be adventuresome and want to be part of this and want to experience it. Yeah, why not? People have had kind of like what we call a womb experience. They don't experience the light. They experience the warm love in the darkness. Kind of like being in a womb. So there's the void and there's the womb and there are different transitional states. Yes?
I just want to thank you for sharing the story. It's very, very similar to mine. There's a lot of what you talked about happened to me in my life, and I too actually am a life coach, so a lot of that resonated with me. One thing that's sort of come up for me, I don't know if other people wonder how we get to where we get to, and I don't know if you can talk to them about transferring from the fear of coming out of depression and pushing yourself on in your life and becoming a life coach and doing the things you've done. That's really courageous, and I don't know if you can sort of talk about that a little bit to other people so they can have that in their lives, get rid of the fear and face the courage.
Yeah, you're asking me about how do people, what do I do, talking with people overcoming fear as a life coach, and how I got from, go from depression out of the state. And I think the first thing I mentioned was, wanting to get out of depression. Some people, there's some kind of payoff where, they're stubborn, like me. I call them stubborn beliefs. They're holding on to some very destructive, very negative, very harmful belief systems about life's purpose, why we're here, and why that person is here. And unless they're wanting to change that, it's, people have choices. They have their own choice, and it's not, so somebody has to be willing to want to come out of this. And depression is a form of fear. It is fear that you're no good, fear that you'll never be happy, fear that you're a failure, fear you'll never get the love you want. It's in an absolute state as well. It's like everything is absolute, never and always. There's no room for any stubborn holding on. So, in coaching, I'm not saying that I cure depression, but in finding purpose and finding what's important, for people who are willing, I think it's, there are many forms of depression. There's sadness and there's all kinds of stuff, but identifying the fears. What are those fears? Fear, I believe, is one thing that's counter to love. Fear is the most destructive element to love. So identifying that fear is the key. Any other questions? Yes?
Well, I don't mean to dominate the questions,
No.
but I'm curious about your book specifically, what you're offering people as spiritual tools to overcome depression.
The book is called Your Blueprint to Passion, a Spiritual Solution to Depression. It's passion, I believe, is the polar opposite to depression. Because in passion, it's just another word for love, in my view, loving what you do and being excited what you do, but also compassion. Compassion means with passion. Compassion and passion are both ways to serve the world. That's energy, that's excitement, that's what keeps us going and able to overcome obstacles and challenges and to get through the day and to do stuff over and over, and it's tough, you know? Life isn't easy. And so this passion, this compassion is that drive, that energy to keep you going. And the depression is when that, I believe, that spiritual energy is sapped from you by thinking non-loving thoughts about yourself, about the world around you, about other people. Or like when people, a lot of depressed people are very resentful people or feel very victim, and they hold on to it. They hold on to this victim thing and that self-pity thing, and they hold on like I did. Just, you know, I was a victim. Life wasn't unfair. Life was never going to give me what I wanted, and nobody could tell me any different. And it was just the negative feeling saps our energy, and we're just down. So I think that energy, and you get the sense in a near-death experience that we're energy. So I am very careful about monitoring my thoughts and my beliefs. And in the book, when we talk about tools for depression, monitoring your thoughts. Are they thoughts that are loving? Are they truthful? Are they authentic thoughts? Or are they these blanket negatives? I'll never do that. I'm never going to talk to that person again. I'm never going to do this. Or I'm always breaking things, and whatever I touch falls apart, and all this negative, so that saps the energy. So monitoring the energy. So what the thoughts are creating this energy. It's just one tool. And also dreams, interpreting dreams that happen for a reason, interpreting what happens. I'll tell you something interesting is that the near-death experience for me was reality. This life, by comparison, is an important dream, is an illusion by comparison. And very important, precious. Life is precious, don't get me wrong. So I began interpreting events in life as if they were a dream. But through an association process, and oh my God, try it sometime. When something happens to you that's very unusual, seems like an out of the blue, a synchronistic moment, or some bizarre thing, accident, think about what that means in a symbolic way, and see if it doesn't come up with a message of love in it.
Yeah, Norman Vincent Peale should have entitled his book, The Wonderfully Incredible Power of Positive Thinking.
Yes.
Also, Pollyanna. People make fun of her, but there is that small, tiny silver lining that you can start to grasp and eventually expand that into a positive world.
Yeah, so Pollyanna, I love Pollyanna. And Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. They're now seeing this is happening in NIH and in medical schools. The power of positive thoughts to affect our cells, how our cells respond to our thinking. They're showing that. That the energy responds to produce certain chemicals Why do chemicals work? Because we have receptors that recognize them. Why do we have receptors that recognize chemicals? Because we could produce them all ourselves. How do we reproduce them all ourselves? With our thoughts. What we think about habitually over and over again. It's just like, it feels like the brain is just a slave to our thinking, okay? Negative thinking, we'll give you negative thinking. Yeah, well, more of that bad chemical, bring you down, bring you down. Yes.
Do you think there is a physical component of depression? I mean,
A physical
is there
component.
You know, that, say somebody doesn't even seem to be like caught in the victimhood or the
Right.
depression and or the negative thoughts, and yet there is a
Yes.
depression there.
If there's a physical cause to depression, well, absolutely. If people, have a chemical imbalance, it can be born with a chemical, it could be a life lesson, it could be, not your choice. I'm not saying blanket all depression is caused by negative thinking, but it certainly could be alleviated to a great degree with it. And perhaps some of it, maybe the negative thinking could result in like not eating properly or not exercising, not taking care of your body, that can lead to depression, or or some undiagnosed illness or something like that. Haven't gone to the doctor to look at that. Well, yes, it all needs to be looked at.
I'm sorry, so a medication, like antidepressant medication is a good tool?
Antidepressants are a good tool. I thoroughly believe that. People who are suicidal especially, it can lift that cloud long enough to start thinking clearly. And if I had them at the time, maybe I would have thought about it, but no, I'm not against medication or anything like that. But I do believe in the power of thoughts to change that. And even physical illness. I really do. We see a lot of healing in near-death experiences through the power of faith. Yes.
I think we think about positive thoughts producing good chemicals, but we never recognize that negative thoughts produce negative chemicals.
That's right.
So chemicals that were produced are causing, it's the thought that is the cause, not the chemical. So if we go the chemical route, then we go the antidepressant route. If we go the spiritual route, then we go the thought route.
Right.
And then we don't have those bad chemicals to start
Right.
with.
That cognitive behavioral therapy is something that's so effective. They use it in psychiatric hospitals, and that's changing your thoughts. But I want to go a step farther and say it's beliefs that underlie those thoughts. The thoughts about life's purpose and why we're here and what happens to us when we die. Those are the important things that upon which the thoughts rest their foundation. Where do we come up with all that negative thinking? Yes, negative thinking definitely produces negative chemicals that bring you down. That's
And it's a
proven.
knowledge that prevents you from having negative thoughts.
Yes,
And we are losing knowledge by the time we think.
yes. We're losing knowledge. Yeah.
Why are we losing knowledge?
That's what I said.
I think we're gaining knowledge. Why do we think we're
No.
losing knowledge?
The knowledge that was supposed to be continuously coming from generation to generation, we are not bringing it. We are gathering newer knowledge, but the link that necessary to understand your knowledge is not pervasively available.
There's a lot of ancient wisdom we haven't connected up with, that understood some of this. And we've got science and other tools to kind of bring us back. Slowly, science is validating what these ancient wisdoms have already recognized.
But actually the science that we knew 60 years ago, we didn't bring it to today. So our children of today don't have that knowledge, so they are groping for answers that they don't know. It's a missing piece of the puzzle. You need to make the puzzle complete. And if those are not there, you cannot put the puzzle together.
It is, I don't know if we can ever put the puzzle completely together while we're here. There are near-death experiences that, they have complete knowledge on the other side. they understand why the universe works, how everything happened, why everything happened in the life review. And then they come back and they remembered that they had this knowledge, but they weren't supposed to remember everything. And so, it kind of is like, to me, putting blinders on when we come into this reality. We can't know everything, but our brains are like focusing in on a certain lesson or some purpose, some meaning that we strive to understand in that way, and recognizing and being humble about the fact that we don't have all the knowledge, and we never will while we're here. Well, if you believe in reincarnation, I think that's why we have to keep coming back. Yes.
Yes, I was going to say concerning science, the scientists are wonderfully advancing our knowledge,
Yes.
but the philosophy on how to use that science is sadly going downhill. And that could be a big, big problem. The terrorists, they have found scientific ways of killing all sorts of people. The morality just isn't there. And take a look at China. They're polluting themselves to death now. So until we become morally responsible, we're just not going to survive.
And what are more morally responsible? But what is that morality based in? Morals. Come away from using the term morals and think about love. Unconditional love.
For yourself, and then
Yes.
you can expand that to
And then
others.
expand that, yes. And then arises out of that a certain kind of principles or ethics and morality. But it's changing, people don't change their morals unless, again, coming back to those fundamental beliefs about life's purpose and life's meaning and what happens when we die. I think what we believe happens when we die determines how we live our lives.
Not with there are some people that, we don't even consider after death we live our life for the good of today and while we're here. Different religions, I guess, preach different things. But from a religious point of view, there are religions that, they would negate what you said.
That's why I left the church.
Your story is very interesting. Did you, once you were healed from this depression, were there ever any other subsequent times in your life where you felt you were relapsing into depression?
Yes.
And how did you get out of them again?
Yeah. I had once very deep depression following this, and I thought, oh my God, I thought I had it all figured out, and now I'm depressed again. What's going on? And that was a major life lesson. It was the third bout with depression, and this was the final, I think. I hope I'll never go there again, because I recognize enough what's going on. I was stressed. I was so stressed with when I was teaching and working so hard and working on this field project and I was stressed to the max, and I gave myself no break, no time to kind of take a breather and reevaluate things. Stress, I believe, is due to fear. Stress is one of the most harmful things in our bodies. That science has proven that stress, it's a major cause of illness. It reduces our immune system. So, but what is stress based on? What's the bottom line of stress? I believe that's fear. And what I was fearing at the time was, I'd been a teacher all my life. If I leave teaching, how am I going to support myself financially? Or, what do people think of me again? Or I'm 50 years old. What kind of career am I going to start at age 50? I had all these things going. I can't do it. It will look like I'm failing again. Or, I didn't do, I had all kinds of stubborn, non-rational thoughts about this. And it took me some thinking about that. And that's when I decided to leave teaching. And when I made the decision, not when I actually, the day I walked out the door, but when I made the decision to leave teaching, again, that passion returned, the stress was gone, and the depression was gone. Like that. The decision. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to stress myself out anymore. I can't change the administration. I can't change what's going on in the school system, but I can change how I think about it and change what I can do with my life. And I want to do something more. And so I'm going to do it. Depression gone. And I said that would happen to anybody who's in that state, you know, thought, but that's what happened to me.
Yeah, and I can just sort of add to that. It's a case of like, when something happens in your life and the pain is so much, sometimes it's pain what takes you to move to the next level, to do something with your life.
Yeah.
You know, you get so down that, it's, as you said, as soon as you decide to make a decision, you kind of like have to listen to, your body's telling you something. It's not always, you have to align your body with your mind and your heart and your soul together and work with it that way. And when you do what your body tells you to do, that releases you from that place.
That's such a good point. When you align your mind with your heart,
Yeah.
and I say exactly the same thing, is make your mind, make those thoughts a servant to your heart. This is where the power is, the love. That's got to come first. And then the thinking, the intelligence, and all those other wonderful talents we've got up here. That's just in service to the heart. So align those two, and that's the secret to passion or feeling good or compassion and being able to understand, feeling your life has purpose and meaning.
I'm sure there are many definitions as to the cause of depression, but
Yes.
one that I have heard is that depression is unexpressed anger.
Unexpressed anger.
And once you can find out what the anger often isn't concrete, it's
Yes.
very vague.
Very vague.
It's very general.
Absolutely.
And if you can be honest enough and in a meditative state, perhaps even to go
Yes.
deep within,
Yes.
it will lift. The
Yes.
depression will lift.
Yes.
You can find out.
You're absolutely right about anger, unexpressed anger or repressed anger. I was definitely very angry, and I didn't know how to express anger. My mom was always very sweet. I was a good girl. Good girls don't aren't angry people. I was stubborn, but I was not an angry person. I didn't confront. The anger, but what's the basis of anger? Fear again. That's how some people cope with fear, is to get angry. And I'm not necessarily expressed anger, but internal anger, and you don't even recognize it as anger, but sometimes it's really angry at you're angry at yourself or for whatever, angry at others for whatever, but take that to its root and you find fear again. So, yeah, there are these levels. Yeah, and so maybe some people have to work through the fear and then go to anger and recognize the anger, that they're really angry. Yes, and I was angry. Absolutely, that's a big part of it. Thanks for bringing that up.
I think a lot of those emotions are based in fear. They all have different degrees to it.
Yes.
And anger does give you your power back.
Yeah.
Anger, resentment.
Yeah.
Down at the bottom of the scale where depression kind of lies.
Yeah.
It is, powerlessness, hopelessness.
Right. I think,
Apathy.
yeah, depression is when you start to give up. When you've been fighting so hard, trying so hard to make life work. Depression sets in when you start to give up. When you just can't do it anymore. You don't want to do it anymore. You haven't let go of your anger, but you just can't fight anymore. You don't want to do it anymore. So, yeah, there are different levels. So anger is a step, I do believe, above fear, because anger is, it feels more powerful, but it's a phony power. It's a false power. You can be You can be strong about stuff and be powerful about things without being angry. You know, there's a wonderful book written by a near-death experiencer called Power versus Force, written by David Hawkins, thank you. Near-death experiencer, and it's the hidden determinants of human behavior. And he talks actually about a lower one than fear, and it's on his scale as shame.
And then despair.
And despair. Yeah, well, yeah, giving up. Right.
Well, shame is kind of what I think of, and then what some psychologists have heard about, talk about depression, is anger directed inward, which is shame.
Yeah, it comes in many forms. And like I say, there's no one answer to any person who has depression. It's individual. It'd be a combination of shame and fear and anger, or predominantly fear, predominantly anger, inward directed anger, outward directed anger. You know, all of those are negative emotions. And they all sap your energy. And the result is depression and giving up and fighting that. Fighting. I find one interesting thing is that when people are in depression, they speak in metaphor. Have you ever noticed that? And I think metaphor is the, talk about tools in depression. Listen to the metaphors that people use when they're speaking. They'll say things like, I feel like I'm being sucked down a dark hole. Or I'm in this mud, I'm drenched in mud. Or I've got these weights hanging off of me. Or whatever they are. And that's so interesting to listen to the metaphor, because it contains a clue about the cause of the depression. So mud could be like negative, negative thoughts over and over, negative thoughts, or, that dark hole, feeling powerlessness, feeling loss of control, fear of losing control. So it's just real interesting to pay attention to metaphors. Big on metaphors. Yes? Yes? Neil?
I happen to know that you and Ken Ring are planning a series of, or some workshops based on Ken Ring's book.
Yes.
I wonder if you could give us some of the details. Like
Okay.
what's going to go on in the workshops? Do you envision them as one time, like a weekend workshop, or ongoing groups, or like support groups? When will they be offered, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay, Ken Ring is, I mentioned him, that I had read his book before I mean, that's one of the miracles in my life, meeting Ken Ring, and not just meeting him, but him wanting to collaborate with me on writing a workbook and developing workshops based on his classic Lessons from the Light. And so what that will be probably one-day workshops, single workshops, possibly two. We're testing it with one. And we'll be training people. If you're interested, see me, get my card, stay after dinner, whatever. We'll be training people to lead those workshops once we've got all the kinks worked out. But it's amazing.
Will they be offered in different places in the country? Or?
Yes, so we hope to get people from lots of different places. Yes.
And I have another totally different question. It's a theoretical question. You mentioned reincarnation.
Yes.
And I notice, I guess we all notice, that people who have a near-death experience tend to come back with a belief in reincarnation. Now, I once asked at a conference, I asked Bruce Grayson whether he thought there was anything internal to the near-death experience itself that induced the belief in reincarnation. He said no, he didn't think so. He said people come back from the experience, they start reading around New Agey stuff, and it feels right to them. But I'm wondering, you as an experiencer,
I would agree
what caused
with
you to
that.
believe in reincarnation? It wasn't your Catholic
What caused me to
upbringing.
believe in reincarnation?
Yeah,
Definitely not my Catholic upbringing. No, and it wasn't my near-death experience. It took me a long time to come around to the notion of reincarnation. But to me, that's the only thing that makes sense. Why? It's the only thing that fits. It's a logical conclusion, not anything I learned in my near-death experience. It's logical. And it resonates because how can there's so much, that love was so infinite. And there's so many facets of love that we can't possibly learn everything there is to be learned in one lifetime. That we have to keep coming back and polishing. I likened it to, speaking of metaphors, I liken it to like an unpolished diamond. And we're unpolished diamonds. And we come here, we're all inside of that diamond. And each lifetime we're polishing away one of its beautiful facets. Whether it's we're here to learn gratitude, or we're here to learn forgiveness, or we're here to learn appreciation, or we're here to learn compassion. And compassion for whom? And for everyone. And each time, there's a particular focus of that. And then when that diamond is complete, we don't have to come back.
God, the cosmic jeweler.
God, the cosmic jeweler.
You were talking about some statistics about near-death experiencers, and I was wondering if you happen to know sort of the percentage that have a negative experience. And we've had Howard Storm here a couple of times, who has a terrific story. And it started out negative, but then it became positive. And how much of that is within that percentage?
I think it's going to be extremely difficult to come up with any kind of accurate figure on how many people have negative, hellish, we call them distressing experiences, to kind of get away from the heaven-hell religious notion of it, but distressing experiences. It's impossible to say. You know how difficult it has been for near-death experiencers to share their radiant experiences or their positive experience for fear that people will call them nuts, Think of the people who've had these hellish, talk about judgment or suicide. You must have been a really bad person. You must have been evil if you had a negative experience. You can imagine that they just don't come out. So I don't know if we're going to ever get an accurate statistic on that.
Of the ones that you've heard of, do they usually switch over to positive?
Yeah, just not everyone that we have, that we know of, has turned into a positive, but all have turned positive in the life. It was what that person, I believe, that person gets in a near-death experience what they need to know to address their life issues for now. And you know how some kids, it's like with children, I think, this is my personal philosophy on this. Some children need a loving approach. They need a nurturing, caring approach, and then they'll come along. But some kids just don't get it. And occasionally they need a little, a little firmer, to get the message in whatever form that comes. And so everybody that I know who's had a really bad experience has come back, I'm shaping up, man. Whatever that was, I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to be very loving. I want to get it just right. So it's had a positive effect. And not all positive experiences have had positive effects. Some people are really angry for being sent back. They are. Feel rejected by heaven, feel rejected by God. So this is one of the things for IANS to really work on. Near-death experience faces a lot of challenges following a near-death experience, and one of them is being homesick for the life, not being able to readjust to life here. You can imagine. And being angry or feeling rejected. There's a lot of emotions that go on after this. Yes?
As a life coach, where do you do your work, and do you do it by phone? I mean,
yes.
Where are you in Chicago?
I'm in San Diego.
Oh, okay.
But I do love most of my life coaching over the phone.
By phone?
By phone.
And do you know Tiffany?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
Tiffany's
You
not.
get her
Yes.
here. Yeah. What was I going to say? And could you just give a maybe brief, is there a thread that runs through the people that you life coach? Is it, what do I want to say? Is there anything in common that you find, or do you work with all kinds of needs, I guess?
All kinds of needs, but I think my specialty is helping people find their passion. What it is that they find their passion.
Okay, well, if
What is it they
If
love?
they know their passion.
If they know their passion, then it's another kind of, yeah.
And no one will answer them, no one
Yes.
will, I mean,
There are ways to find out.
there's what?
There are ways to find out.
Find out.
Help them discover.
Help them with
Discover.
the obstacles in their lives, you know, other kinds of obstacles.
It's other people. I mean, it's work.
Yes, yes.
Do you, in your life coaching, are you speaking mostly from practical experience plus this knowledge, or do you also feel like you have an intuitive component that you can kind of help them see things in their energy or in their future that they may be blocking?
I don't see auras like a lot of near-death experiences do, or feel like but I do see metaphors. I see metaphors when I'm talking with people. I don't know if that's psychic or what it is, but you know, I just get this image in my mind, and I get a very strong sense of what's going on. Not, you know, and I don't want to rely on that too much because I don't know if that's my thinking about it or if it comes from somewhere else. I definitely have a strong sense of intuition. Very strong, almost too strong. Sometimes it'd be, because it sparks up that stubborn part of me.
Do you have a website?
No, not to, no. When I'm done being president of IANS, then I gotta get back to that.
Oh,
More,
okay.
my book and website and all that stuff.
What, are you doing life coaching now, or?
Yes, word of mouth. But if you're interested in contacting me, I've got cards. But that's all it. Yeah, so it's time for maybe one more question.
I always had the assumption, and I guess I'm wrong, that when we pass away, we leave our egos. But if we're having, some people have bad experiences, then evidently they're taking their egos with them. Is that correct?
Oh, that's an interesting question about dying and leaving your ego behind, you know?
What's your take on that?
My take on that is that we don't change. This ego is not separate from who we are. That I was exactly the same person I am. I don't leave anything behind but just clothing, an old body, you know. Ego is not, that's part of who you are, it doesn't change. No, I think that, you know, and I would think that too, as, you know, being raised Catholic, the soul, you know, and an ego body self is left behind, and now you're kind of in a purer state. No, you're
taking your beliefs with you.
You take everything with you. Your beliefs, your memories, your emotions, maybe
that's why we're here, to clear it up.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds so well. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's wonderful having you here. Thanks to all of you for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month with Dina Jace Moore. And you will also enjoy that very much. So don't forget your trash. Please, please. Not in the And call me if you want to be on the waiting list for Dina.